Hello ladies and gentlemen, this is the Borg Move 1, their advanced guard coming onto the table and Guy moving forward the light cavalry, the Borg Hussars that we've adjudicated are in loose order because it makes a difference. And of course he's got infantry in column on the road there that might actually be 12 base widths or more away from the closest enemy, which would mean they could move at a double on the road there. That would really get things moving. And so we have Grenouisse coming over the hills here. We're hoping to obviously put a stop to this incursion onto our territory. These nasty Borg who've crossed the river via pontoon bridges further north and are now heading south parallel to the river along the road, and we're hoping to put a stop to that. But we'll have to see what happens, won't we, ladies and gentlemen? Tune in again later. Just checking in with a very short video because my heavy cavalry brigade, which is there, you're thinking, how did it get there when it was up here? That's because I just had the most astonishing command roll. A double 1 followed by a 5, which meant that they were able to, because of the distance from the enemy at the start of the move, they were able to move an amazing 16 base widths, which has sent them plunging down into the valley, and they are now athwart the road. And Guy is now having to rethink his plan.
Yeah, I need to read the rules.
So we're about to start turn 2 because my phase of turn 1 meant that things changed quite a lot, as you can see. I got some lovely command rolls. Not so much over on my left flank here, where the infantry have moved quickly towards that field, but that's just because they're a long way away from the enemy, so they were able to do that. Decent command roll in the middle, bit of a bonus, which meant that those infantry are heading to follow up the massive cavalry advance. Over here, just fairly bog standard, and discovered that this light gun is out of range. I did that classic thing of, oh, that's a nice hill to put a battery on, but it's useless because it's out of range, so I'm going to have to move that. This gun, however, had good success, opened fire on the enemy hussars over there, inflicted 4 casualties, but because their commander-in-chief is right with them, they passed just, so they're okay. But certainly Guy has got plenty to think about. Ladies and gentlemen, end of turn 2 and interesting developments. Let me start over on my left flank. The Grenouissian infantry has continued to advance. It's not got any opposition here at the moment, of course, but it's managed to make good progress heading across this walled field, and obviously got loads of nice protection, but it doesn't need protecting at the moment, so that's a bit sad. In the centre, the heavy cavalry has just adjusted its position slightly to make sure it's definitely athwart that main thoroughfare. Infantry will be arriving soon. They are making decent progress in column of march to get to where the action is. All the main stuff's been happening in the centre. Okay, we've got a unit of hussars here, which is adding support. But what happened was, as you may have seen, that the Borgenmark hussars moved into a bit of cover behind the cottage there, so they couldn't just get charged in the flank by the cuirassiers. Their infantry is deploying onto the far side of the road, and what's happened is that one of their units of hussars here has countercharged my lancers, my Ulanen, which went charging in, convinced that they would just sweep away the opposition, but no, they were mistaken, and what's emerged is, to both our surprises really, is a stalemate. equal honours, and so that melee will continue. Meanwhile, more Grenouissian infantry is moving into position here, whilst the light troops are getting a bit cheeky, and in fact I realised I probably could have shot with them this turn but forgot, so it doesn't matter. But there we are, that's where they are, made good progress, and we are awaiting reinforcements on both sides. There was the gun here, took a cheeky shot at long range and managed to knock off another of those hussars that are now next to the building in the distance there, but nothing to trigger a morale test or anything of that kind. So that's where we are, ladies and gentlemen. Let's give you an overview from the Grenouissian side of the table so you can see what's happening. Hi folks, and here we are again. This is the end of turn 3. And in Guy's turn, he's done quite a lot. He's shuffled some things around, as you can see. There was a melee, and my lancers trounced his hussars, who didn't just run away, they dispersed in no uncertain terms. So there's suddenly room for my guys in the centre of the table there to move forward. Meanwhile, Guy started to bring in some reinforcements. He wanted to bring in a lot more, but unfortunately his lead brigadier blundered. So that dragoon unit that you can see over there at the end of the road is the only one he managed to bring in there. There was this unit of cuirassiers that managed to sneak past off the road. And these hussars have moved forward, threatened my light infantry that were there, but my light infantry skillfully evaded into the edge of the wood and have subsequently loosed off a volley at long range. Didn't kill anyone, but they're being cheeky. And my light infantry in the farmyard there, who are now well ensconced, managed to take down a hussar. Meanwhile, this brigade of line infantry, is deploying into line because they're not daft. They can see cavalry in the distance. My reinforcements have now arrived in the form of a regiment of cuirassiers atop the hill here, and some Schwitz mercenaries that have just arrived near the centre of the field. Over on my left flank, infantry advancing, just making steady progress, and in the centre the cavalry have moved slightly off the road to create more space for the infantry that are about to deploy to face the oncoming Borg. So it's all to play for, ladies and gentlemen, and it's all looking terribly exciting. And so this is where it is at the end of turn 3. Just a little video note that, contrary to expectations, with my hussars having decided to charge here and pass their test to do so successfully, I had perhaps fondly imagined that the Borg hussars would turn tail, because they've taken quite a lot of casualties. They're nearly down to half strength. But what with the commander-in-chief not far away, and secure flanks and support nearby and that kind of stuff, and a good dice roll of 10, they're going to take it. So this is going to be an interesting little thing happening here. So welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This is Henry, and I have continued the game, what you might want to call the Carillon beside the Carillon, of the Grenouissians on this side of the table that I have been commanding, trying to prevent the Borg from Borgenmark on the far side of the table, coming in from the right there, from basically gallivanting through Grenouissian territory beside the river down that road. And I was playing yesterday with Guy, who was playing the Borg commander, and we did 3 moves, but we had to abandon it because the heat up here in the Luftwaffe just became ridiculous. So about 4:30 in the afternoon, we had to call it a day. But it was left in an interesting position, and so Guy and I discussed it and decided that I'm going to carry on playing it solo for a bit, and I'm really glad I have, because here we are now at the end of turn 4, and some interesting things have happened. Now let me take you on a little bit of a walk to point you over towards the far side of the table. In fact, I'm going to walk you around, ladies and gentlemen. I hope this isn't too wobbly. I'm just hand holding my iPhone. Excuse all the noises outside, neighbours. It's a hot Saturday in the summer, what can I say? Fans going. But here we are. The Borg actually had a bit of a better move in their turn 4. And a bit of a shame Guy wasn't here to see it. They had some reasonable command rolls. So let me tell you what's happened here. He put some light infantry into this house, and I've realised I didn't have a rule in my shots in zone rules for loopholing the walls, because the model of the house hasn't got any windows on the far side. So it's like, oh, well, you can't shoot out that side. Well, that seems a bit daft, doesn't it? Because troops of the horse and musket era were well known for loopholing walls. I mean, you only have to look at the fight for Hougoumont or La Haye Sainte at Waterloo. So I've devised a rule which said that, right, so long as troops are inside a house and do nothing else for a full turn, they will have created loopholes, and that building thereafter is a loopholed building that effect is the same as if it had windows, all the way around. And it's indicated, can you see the little blue tiddlywink there? I've done a blue tiddlywink. So that means that is now a loopholed building from which anyone could benefit if they occupy it later in the game. So anyway, what we have here is these Oostergotland infantry, who he had started to advance, and this bunch was in column of march. I've deployed them into lines, so basically they're giving potential fire support to their colleagues should these Grenouissian cavalry decide to make something of it, and we'll come back to that in a minute. But let's concentrate on the Borg. Also, Guy had a bit of a bit of a log jam happening, and he deployed some hussars. He brought them off the road over there, and I was looking at the situation and thinking, I wouldn't necessarily take them any further over in that direction. So they had a decent, they don't need a command role, and they got decent distance. So I brought them whoosh back here to help cover the road and help put pay to any potential Grenouissian naughtiness in that kind of area. Obviously with the gun in support. I'll come back to what's happened in the middle there in a second. Also, they've managed to bring in now some very, I think they're elite guard cuirassier type people, and the dragoons are sorting themselves out and coming this way off the road, and a battery of howitzers has arrived over in the corner there. I'm pointing, can we see me pointing? That's good. And also a brigade of musketeers, very smartly marching, still in column of march, to support that regiment of cuirassiers that quite rightly is just like, we're just going to stay here for a bit, all right? So the Borg position has definitely kind of improved, that's for sure. Now let's look at the Grenouissians. Well, I was thinking of, I know me, cavalry, love cavalry, so good, charge. But I did his command roll, and he rolled an absolute clunker of a command roll. So it's like, do you know what? I think we'll just stay here. Meanwhile, this infantry brigade that had been marching down from the hills has had a decent command role, and so they have now started deploying to help support those cavalry, maybe even to replace them in due course. So that brigade's absolutely fine. Similarly, this brigade of infantry that was coming down through the field up there, I'm pointing, come down all the way here, they're now almost at the road. So I'm very happy with their progress as the Grenouissian commander, and so they're going to be in a position to deploy to form a line, defensive line, and then we'll see what happens. The other thing that's happened is over here, reinforcements arrived, battery of medium artillery. That's going to be useful. That arrived there. It was decided randomly where they would come in, but it's not a bad position for them. They're high on the hill, they've got time to unlimber, and of course potentially a lovely line of sight over to the enemy should they get too cheeky and get too close. But we'll see. There's more thinking to be done about that. Meanwhile, the brigade of Schwitzers, who are kind of mercenaries, they have advanced down off the hill. They had just a decent command roll. So they're well on the way to be able to form some kind of defensive line to support the Grenouissians there. So that's good progress. This gun has been banging away. Actually, it didn't have much success, I don't think. No, something else did, but that didn't have a great deal of success this time, but never mind. Meanwhile, this light battery, which was way out of range, has started to move down this track to be able to unlimber here somewhere to lend support in the centre. So there we go, that's all right. Over here, this heavy cavalry unit has moved down off the hill to support the centre. Again, that's nice and healthy. The brigade of line infantry, 2 units in line here, between 2 sets of wood. That looks pretty formidable to me. I think if I was a Borg commander, I would think twice about taking them on in a hurry, but we'll see. And they are well supported with all this light infantry. We've got 1, 2, 3 units of chasseurs there, lining the edge of the woods. The forest here, he said, destroying parts of the forest. And even though they can only sort of take pot shots, really, it's kind of 1 dice per base, it can start to add up, as we'll see, because over here, where I've got a unit of chasseurs in the field next to the barn, where guys also snuck in. Can you see he's got a unit of Jaeger there? There's only 1 base outside because the rest are inside, busily bashing holes in the walls, I'm sure. But they have been there for a little while, but their opportunity came when that unit of hussars hove into view, and these guys loosed off, a ragged volley of skirmishing musketry. It's only 1 dice per base, but as it turned out, it was a really good volley, and all the dice, because it was a very close range, obviously, all the dice scored a hit, and Guy only managed to save 1 of them. So there's a gap now. Half of that lead squadron has been blatted. Guy didn't manage to save them. So, Guy's proxy, that's me rolling his dice. Sorry, Guy, didn't manage to save them. There we go. Now, meanwhile, here we had my unit of chasseurs à cheval that decided, right, we're going to have the rest of that Borg bunch of hussars. Let's charge. And they successfully charged. And yeah, interestingly, the Borg said, yeah, all right then. Now, they weren't able to get up to charge speed. They didn't have enough distance. They didn't have their charge bonus distance to reach charge speed, so they were confined to just using the melee values for dice. But as luck would have it, of course, they won, and have shoved back my right-hand squadron there, which took a loss. They've shoved them back, and now the melee will continue, but with my side, the Grenouissians, having now, more by luck than judgment, that other squadron on the left, which is, a bit weak, but it is now going to be helping out in the melee. But that's just Sod's Law, isn't it? I thought I'd be able to punch a nice big hole through there, but no, the Borg, they done good, bless their hearts, and shoved me back. So that, ladies and gentlemen, is the situation at the end of turn 4. As I pan back here, if I move back, and it's all quite exciting. There's still lots to play for. So, because I was thinking, well, if it still looks rubbish for the Borg at this point, I will just say, well, that's enough. But I think I'm going to play at least 1 more move and see what happens, ladies and gentlemen. And hopefully before it gets too hot again up here in the Luftwaffe. So there we are. That's the end of turn 4 now, with the Grenouissians doing their best to keep the Borg in check, generally speaking, doing a pretty good job, but yeah, still plenty to do. Thanks for watching. Ladies and gentlemen, the end of turn 5 of the game, which I've done a couple of full moves solo now. Anyway, let's have a quick look around and see what's happened, because goodness me, turn 5 has been dramatic. So let's start with the Borg, and obviously you can see over there more arrivals, a lot of infantry arriving over there, battery of artillery, cavalry advance forward. We'll come back to this bit of the table shortly. Their infantry are just kind of been shuffling forwards and sorting themselves out. Over here, yeah, things have changed in the centre. We'll come back to that in a minute. Over on this side, oh yeah, things have changed a lot. And on the other flank, the southern side of the battlefield, not a lot has changed. Some advancing's been doing, some deployment, as you can see over there. Cavalry pulling back for infantry to take their place, but not a great deal else there. But my goodness me, look what's been happening in the centre and on the what would be the eastern side, given that the river over there is in the west. So something's missing over here, isn't it? Yes, a unit of Borg cuirassiers, and yes, well, they attempted to charge the Grenouissian infantry here, who let loose a stonking volley at point blank range, which stopped the charge dead in its tracks. This was before all that light infantry cluttered things up. The cuirassiers had come from over there and thought, right, we can't hang about here because we're going to get sniped at by all that light infantry. So they went for it, charged at this infantry, who steady, boys, steady, stood their ground, and the dice determined that they let loose their first volley at, yes, point blank range. Blatted the cuirassiers, stopped them dead, and then what's happened is in the following move, in the Grenouissian turn 6, even though their volley was a bit ragged, it was enough to kind of finish them off. And it's been determined that basically the unit of cuirassiers, now being cut off as well, surrendered, and so the Grenouissians have captured the colours and the Brigadier who was commanding them. Wow! So that was followed up by, now there's a gap. So yes, the Grenouissians have sent forward all their light infantry to start pecking away at those Borg infantry advancing from their starting point over there. And yes, they've already taken one casualty. So there we go. In the centre here, well, the Borg hussars, impeded by the fences, obviously, of the field, wanted to get rid of that unit of chasseurs, so they kind of jumped into the field, but the chasseurs evaded, came back over this fence and into these woods, and so the hussars kind of like, oh gosh, we can't jump another set of fences, and so stopped where they were. And so then what's happened is that the Grenouissian unit of cuirassiers here have trotted forward very nicely and loosed off their pistols. That doesn't often happen in a game, but it was like, well, trying to charge them, jumping over fences, risky business and stuff. So, I'm not worried about the hussars. I thought I'd give them a shot. Unfortunately, no casualties caused, but never mind. This unit of hussars that got bested by the Borg hussars has pulled back quite sensibly. Why not? That unit of light artillery has unlimbered in a very good place. But, of course, you'll notice there's a yawning gap here. Whereas over there, what we've got is the Lancier, the Grenouissier Lancier, not only ploughed through the remainder of the Borg hussars who were in the centre here, basically demolishing them. It was very to and fro, but basically they got the best of them. And so they've broken through and also hit the unit of Borg dragoons in the flank. Now, I had high hopes for that, but the Borg, their dice were fantastic. So even though they were a bit disrupted and, oh my goodness me, what's this, got hit in the flank and, you know, reduced numbers able to fight back and what have you, they've managed to hold their ground against the lanciers, who are now a bit knackered and disrupted and frustrated themselves, so they will be pulling back. So that was very exciting though. The dice rolling went to and fro and it was like, oh my goodness me, but there we go. That's what happened there. As I say, over this side of the table, let's walk around. The Schwitzers are advancing nicely into position. This battery of artillery, medium artillery that arrived, is just following up, ready to deploy. Over here, yes, we've got these 2 units of dragoons that are redeploying because basically they're not going to be foolish enough and charge in against the Ofteborg infantry, who will blat them, no doubt. So they're just going to move back out the way whilst the infantry take their place, ready to deliver volleys of musketry should it be called on. And back here, this brigade of infantry is all, you know, perfectly safe here, in reserve, able to, you know, plug any gaps and guard the road to Grenouisse, which is kind of, if you look at the bottom of the screen, that's the road leading off south. But I think that there's now little likelihood of the Borg being able to achieve that, even though, let's have a look over here on this flank, on the western flank. You know, the Borg have done a pretty good job. They've got some cavalry in support of the infantry now, but yeah, that, if nothing else, the charge of the Grenouissian lanciers has caused a bit of a kerfuffle and a disruption. There's going to have some plans rethought there. There's the Borg commander-in-chief looking on. He's got some artillery, yes, but they're kind of a bit blocked in now. I suppose they could try and deploy somewhere here around that cornfield with a howitzer and that medium gun. They've also got a heavy gun now that's arrived over here with hosts more, 2 more brigades, 4 battalions of Borg infantry, which means that, you know, certainly if they decide to withdraw, they've got enough troops to cover their withdrawal. But to be honest, do I think they can break out of this position? This is where I'm going to make an assessment, because obviously I could play another move, even though it's very hot up here in the Luftwaffe at 3 o'clock on Saturday afternoon. I could play another move, but what would it actually achieve? Because all that's going to happen now is that the Grenouissians are going to solidify this defensive line. There's no obvious route of attack now for the Borg to exploit. Those Schwitzer infantry are very solid veterans indeed. We've got a couple of nice units of heavy cavalry here. So even though they're outnumbered, I would say that the Grenouissians are pretty safe here. They would certainly be able to hold on, and they're doing better than just holding on, aren't they? They're doing much better than just holding on. Over in this central part of the battlefield, they've actually done brilliantly, much better than I expected. And certainly the way that those lancers have ploughed into those dragoons and made everyone sit up and take notice is like, oh gosh, that's better than the Grenouissians could have hoped for. Here, those Borg Hussars in that field there, I mean, what are they going to do? They made a rod for their own back because they're now surrounded by obstacles and faced by cuirassiers. So they're probably going to want to pull back. And if they pull back, where are they going to pull back? That means if the Borg had been thinking of setting up their artillery round about that field there, their field of fire is going to be blocked. Could the Hussars come out and attack the light infantry here? Well, possibly, but don't forget those light infantry can also they can just evade, and they've got lots of friends nearby. Those Hussars are in a bit of a tricky position, and meanwhile, even though the fire of these chasseurs is a bit kind of desultory, and obviously it's only 1 dice per base under my rules, so they're not going to, you know, completely demolish those Borg infantry with a mass crashing volley. You know, the fact is they're just going to get nibbled away at. and the light infantry can easily move faster than them, move out of the way, go and hide back in the woods, shoot from the edge of the woods. Solid brigade of infantry here. One of the regiments of infantry here has still got its first volley in reserve. Brigadiers there, commander-in-chiefs here, light battery of artillery now unlimbered there, medium battery of artillery here, which incidentally took a shot at the dragoons. I'm pointing at this. Took a shot at the dragoons in the distance on the road before the lancers got to them, and took a couple of casualties off. So that unit of Borg dragoons is already weakened. Big, another lovely battery of artillery here that will probably set up somewhere in the centre to support the lines of infantry. That's a pretty solid defensive position now. So I don't think the Borg have got the numbers to exploit or take their advance any further at this point. So therefore I'm going to call this, at this point, I'm going to call this game and say that the Grenouissians have been successful in thwarting the Borg from moving south along the road, and the Borg are going to have to call on a great many more reinforcements if they're thinking of taking this any further. And of course the Grenouissians will be rushing reinforcements from the direction of Courvige, the capital, which is down to the southeast. The Borg may well decide, well, do we even want to camp out here? Would we be better off actually pulling back to where we crossed the pontoons in the first place and looking for other options, or abandoning the invasion altogether? But certainly at this point, I think it's fair to say, that the Grenouissians have at worst achieved a stalemate, and I think they've actually achieved a narrow victory. They've certainly inflicted more casualties. So I would say congratulations to Le Roi, Raoul of Grenouisse, for his the tremendous performance of his troops. And whilst the Borg have been stubborn and brave, I don't think they can take this any further at this point. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed the game as much as I have, folks. And obviously, I'll be doing a write-up about this as well. Thanks for watching.